I can't really see in here, so I don't know exactly sort of what the timeline is here, but I would love to be able to sort of just give you a little bit of a break, ask you a couple of political questions, and then we'll take some questions from the audience that have been sort of pre-screened for clarity and lack of duplication. So first, right off the bat, I'm gonna try one more time. I'm gonna try one more time. Are there any GOP candidates that are currently being mentioned for president who, if they got in the race, you would definitely stay out? Okay. All right, I've been there. In 1994, I mean, hopefully we can talk about the contract with America. You know, you were the prime mover behind that, and the current House leadership has come out, Republicans have come out with the Pledge to America, which you said was a significant boost, but not a home run. What would have made it a home run?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure they're in a situation to create a home run. This is a different time. It's a different set of circumstances. We were standing on Reagan's shoulders. No Republican had created a majority in 40 years. We were in a position where I'd spent 16 years working on the project. And so we had tremendous permission from our members, who, after all, hadn't won in 40 years and figured, why not? I mean,
right.
You know, the worst will happen is we'll lose. We've been there before.
Right.
They're in a different environment. I'll give you an example, because I talked to them all the way through designing this.
Okay.
They reached the conclusion that the anti-Washington mood was so intense, and the Tea Party rejection of Washington was so intense, that to do a Capitol Steps event the way we did it would have been counterproductive.
Where you had everyone there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think they were right. I think people want a more grassroots feel this year than they wanted in 1994. I think it's that different an environment. Now, what I tell everybody is, don't measure the pledge, which is focus on jobs, lower taxes, lower spending, and very substantial reform of the bureaucracy. I mean, a really big reform piece on the bureaucracy. Don't look at the pledge and compare it to 94. Look at the pledge and compare it to Pelosi and Reid.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, you know, if you take tax increases, unemployment, giant bureaucracy, and huge deficits over here, and you take the Republican pledge, suddenly the pledge looks awfully darn good compared to where we've been going. It's a 180-degree turn from where Pelosi and Reid took us.
But it just seemed like there was some implied sort of disappointment that, I mean,
you mean
really,
from me?
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing that prevents someone from hitting a home run except you don't hit it.
No, look, I think if you're in a situation, and I mean, think about baseball teams. If you're in a situation where you got a hitter at bat who can hit a good solid double and get on base, or they can strike out swinging for the fences, they're a lot better off to get a double. I mean, I regard a double, I mean, listen, I remember the old Atlanta Braves. Doubles were miracles. I mean, people were...
Okay. I don't know that much about the Atlanta Braves, but I do know about the Cleveland Indians, and a double was a double. One more question, then we're going to go to the questions from the audience, all right? And this is a question about political polarization and some self-reflection. It would be helpful on your part. You know, increasingly the political middle is getting bigger, and the political parties on the left and the right are getting smaller. That seems to be an indication that people are really dissatisfied with this sort of extreme partisanship. What do you think can be done to sort of, you know, address that? And is it important anymore to sort of have bipartisanship? Because it seems that that is disappearing from American political life.
Well, I think it's very helpful to have principled bipartisanship. And it's very destructive to have bipartisanship without principles. And let me draw a distinction. When I was first elected Speaker, I went to the Friday after the election. And I gave a speech at the Heritage Foundation, and I said, we will cooperate but not compromise. And the Washington establishment went nuts because they said, after all, if you don't cooperate, if you don't compromise, you know, you're setting up polarization. But if you look at the actual track record, we said we need to get to a balanced budget. The left said you can't get to a balanced budget. 80-something% of the American people said it would be good to get to a balanced budget. Bill Clinton said to the left, you know, I kind of like this balanced budget idea.
Right.
He and I negotiated 35 days to get to a balanced budget. We ended up closing the government at one point to get to a balanced budget. But as a result, we kept spending in a bipartisan way, liberal Democrat president, conservative Republican speaker. We kept spending for 4 years at an average of 2.9% increase, including all the entitlements, the lowest rate since Calvin Coolidge. We cut taxes for the first time in 16 years, designed to accelerate economic growth, to put people to work so they could pay taxes. We balanced the budget for 4 years and paid off $405 billion in debt. Now, was it hard? You betcha. Were we both partisans? Every morning. But we were partisans who said, it's better for the country and it's better for both of us to actually get something done. I mean, the great disappointment I have in President Obama, and I said this from day one, when Callista and I went to the inaugural, and he gave a good inaugural speech. He gave a great speech at Grant Park on election night.
Yeah, you've praised that quite a bit.
And I said to her as we left, you know, if he'll govern in the center, if he'll be Eisenhower, he'll keep the Republicans in the minority for a generation, because he'll force the Republicans between those who are willing to work with him and those who are determined never to work with him. And he'll absolutely dominate the center. They come up with a $787 billion stimulus package, and he basically allows Nancy Pelosi to say to the House Republicans, we will write the bill, we will take care of all of our interest groups, we will ram it through on our terms, and if you vote no, you're being a partisan. And so every single Republican, 100% said, got it. This is a war. And for the last 2 years, that's what we've lived through. Now, my advice to the Republicans, if they become a majority, is not reach out and try to find a compromise in the middle with Pelosi, but reach out and find the 35 or 38 Democrats who voted no on Obamacare. I mean, there's the beginning of your new bipartisanship.
So you do think that bipartisanship is important as...
Look, not only do I think it's important, when we passed welfare reform, we got exactly 1/2 of the Democratic caucus, 101 to 101, voted yes. I mean,
seems like a long time ago, doesn't it?
Well, it does. Charlie Rangel used to tell people openly, and annoy some Democrats, I helped pass the Africa Free Trade Act because I thought it was desperately important to get away from foreign aid and towards job creation.
Right.
And he'll tell you flatly, if I had not actively worked with him, it wouldn't have happened. So you go down item by item. Now, was I any less conservative? I don't think so. I think I was arguably the most conservative speaker in modern times. But I was a conservative speaker who, as an Army brat, had grown up thinking that you had to put the country first and that you had to find a way to work with the other team.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to go back to questions from the audience, all right? So this question is from George Sullivan, Preparedness Program Coordinator, American Red Cross. So what steps would you advise the next Congress to take to help our nation better be prepared to survive another event like 9/11?
It's a great question, and I would suggest two things very strongly. The first is to consciously build a much more aggressive public-private partnership with the private partners playing a much more aggressive role. If you look at Katrina, both Walmart and IBM were capable of delivering more goods more rapidly at less cost than was the US government, and they could not get the government to allow them to just do the job. And so I'd look at that.
Yeah.
But the second thing I would do is I would pick 3 cities a year, randomly. Excuse me. And in those 3 cities, I would have a genuine exercise for 2 or 3 days. And I do it for 2 reasons. I do it, first of all, to test the systems. I mean, if you look at the stuff that works well in America, it's stuff we practice.
Right.
I mean, you can't just have a theory and have an occasional meeting once a year and then think it's going to work. So you got to test it, you got to stress it. And 3 cities is about the most you can stress.
Okay.
But there's a second reason. If Americans saw what Denver or Atlanta or Seattle would be like after a nuclear event,
Yeah.
their determination to have an effective homeland security, an effective intelligence service, an effective campaign would go up 100-fold because they're truly horrifying. And I think we kid ourselves by basically saying, it'd be like saying, you really don't have to worry about fire in a high rise because it hasn't happened in a long time, and we'll invent something if it starts.
Right. Yeah.
That's a recipe for a nightmare.
Got it. The second question is from John Paul Williams, Community Emergency Response Team in Fort Collins. Mr. Gingrich, when the Honorable Tom Ridge spoke at the cell, he did not address the border issue as it relates to terrorism or illegal immigration. Can you please address how we should control the border and what the relationship is to national security?
I think this is one of the most interesting mental breakdowns in American life. We go through all of this elaborate effort at airports around the world.
This is the 8 million pair of shoes?
It's 8 billion.
8 billion?
B.
Okay.
If it was money, it would have been T. If it's shoes, it's B. If it's people, it was M.
Okay.
But literally, think about it. All the effort we put into security at airports, on the presumption that our opponents can't rent a truck in Mexico. Now, if I had put a map up of every airport on the planet and said to you 20 years ago, imagine having tight security at all these places, some analysts would have said, they're too far apart, they're too different, you can't do it, it's hopeless. Now we assume it, we demand it. And then we turn to the border and we go, gosh, this is really hard. No, it's not really hard. I mean, countries have controlled the border for time immemorial. The Romans built Hadrian's Wall to keep the Scots out of England. The fact is the Israelis control the border on every side. The fact is the Soviets controlled the border. The fact is the Chinese control the border. I mean, lots of people control the border. It takes willpower. It takes investment. It takes seriousness. Now, let me be very clear. I am pro-immigrant. I am deeply, passionately committed to legal immigration into the United States. I am also for our borders being efficient. Controlling them doesn't mean being stupid. Okay, so I've talked to UPS, which used to be in the district I represented. I've talked to FedEx. I said, could we design corridors that were secure? So that I knew that if I handed my box to a UPS agent here, that it was handled by bonded people all the way to the next country, and it was delivered by somebody we trusted. And they said, yeah, about 50 times easier and faster and cheaper than the government will do it. And so I would like to see a serious effort to control the border. I also believe if you're going to control the border, and there are three different aspects.
Right.
You want to control the border because of terrorism. You want to control the border to cut off the drug dealers so you can starve out the cartels in Mexico.
Right.
Because we are the primary funders of the cartels in Mexico, and we should be ashamed that we tolerate it.
Right.
And finally, you want to control the border so people come to the U.S. legally. To really do that, you have to have a guest worker program that's effective because you have to meet the economic needs without establishing illegality.
Right.
And so we have to be honest as a country and talk through reality.
And you still believe that the 11 million illegals who are here should go back?
I think they should either go back or they should pass some test. Let me draw the two distinctions.
Okay.
I would not ask today somebody from Venezuela to go back to Venezuela, but I would probably ask them to go somewhere to the equivalent of a Venezuelan consulate. But given the Chavez regime,
Okay.
I don't think I'd ask them to go to Venezuela.
Okay.
There's a real case study in Dallas, Texas that a school board member was telling me about. 19-year-old kid came here at 3 years of age, technically illegal, can't currently get in, valedictorian in his high school, can't currently get into a Texas university with a scholarship because he doesn't have any papers. I'm not sure, he doesn't speak Spanish very well because he's been here since he was 3. I think a country that had some reasonable method of determining would say he's not in the group you're going to make go back to Mexico to apply. You'd find some way to say, okay, this is a case just common sense would solve.
Okay.
But I refuse to be told that we can't apply common sense for the exceptions, and therefore every single person, including last night's illegal entries, all have to get amnesty because we can't figure out a system that distinguishes.
Okay, fair enough. One more question. We're going to take one more question. This question is from Joe Thomas, University of Denver. If the U.S. becomes less dependent on foreign sources of energy, will that significantly change our prospects in terms of being targeted by terrorist organizations, do you think?
Since this is the last question, let me just start by saying, again, I want to thank the folks who have created and run and designed the counterterrorism education learning laboratories, because I think this is a remarkable national asset and one that I'm certainly going to talk about and advocate people to visit. When they come to Denver, they should come and see the cell. And I'm grateful for that. I would like to answer her question in sort of two parts.
Okay.
Radical Islamists don't target us because we do or don't buy oil. They target us because we're free. And our freedom is an offense to their value system. However, an American energy program that emphasized American energy, that kept $500 billion a year at home to create American jobs to help us get out of the recession, would in fact substantially reduce the amount of money the Saudis and Iranians had to subsidize terrorism. And so while they might still want to attack us, they'd have less money to do it with.
Okay, excellent. Well, listen, I want to thank Speaker Newt Gingrich for offering his insights. It was entertaining as I suspected it would be. And I want to thank all of you for attending the CELS event tonight. I want to remind you all that on October 28th, Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano will be here, and I hope to see some of you here. Have a great evening. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Great.
This is very good. Very good.